In this video, I'll be going over how to identify the ground squirrels, specifically the smaller ground squirrels. So let's say you have a skull, you know it is a squirrel, you know that it's a ground squirrel, you know it's too small to be a marmot or a prairie dog, you know it's too big to be a chipmunk. What is it? These are our four options. There's another Eurysitellus in parts of Montana, not out here, and so these are the four that we're going to cover for class. Calospermophilus lateralis, Eurysitellus columbianus, Eurysitellus richardsoni, Ectodomus tridiosum linealis. All of these have skulls smaller than a prairie dog, larger than a chipmunk. So if you're trying to figure out which species it is, there are a few different ways you can look at it. So these two, Calospermophilus lateralis and Ectodomus tridiosum linealis, have a greatest length less than 45 and have a peg P1. So, in contrast to the Eurysitellus that has over 45, so you can just see smaller skull, larger skull, and with the measurement you can tell exactly which size it is. And then these two have a teeny tiny peg tooth. I'm pointing to it right now, in front of all the other ones, right there. Versus, if you look at these ones, their first tooth is large and almost regular size. Maybe a little bit smaller, but not a teeny peg. So, less than 45 with a peg tooth, over 45 with a large tooth. How to tell these two apart then? Eurysitellus columbianus versus richardsoni. That is from the temporal ridges. So remember with the foxes, we had kind of these temporal ridges. Here we have this V shape converging in the back. Versus this one, it's a little harder to tell because it's very shiny, but I'm tracing the outline right there. So this right there is the outline. This number is written kind of inside that outline right there. So that's more of this U-shaped temporal ridge that then comes to this little pointing. So now with these two, if they're similar size and have a similar first tooth, how do we tell them apart? We want to look at the shape of the teeth. Now this is complicated. There are photos in your book, which I might just pull up because photos might be clearer than my drawings. But basically, this Calospermophilus lateralis, if we're looking that this is kind of towards the tongue, this is towards the cheek, this is front, this is back. You see these kind of ridges rising up along the whole cheek tooth and kind of connecting to the next one. Calospermophilus lateralis. For these other three, Eurysitellus and Ectodomus, Ectodomus is the important one because that's the one that otherwise is similar. You see that you don't have this enamel ridge going the whole way around. Instead, there's a little bit of a valley between the two. This can be really, really difficult to tell from a top-down view. So what I think is the clearest way to look at it is if you look from the side. So for example, let me look at this tooth. So I'm looking at the skull kind of across at the other side. So I'm looking at the far side. And do I see these kind of ridges linking up with one another? Or do I see gaps, kind of like, a castle wall with these parapets and dips? So here is an example where you can see, perhaps, with the video, that there are kind of gaps of lower tooth between the high points. Let me see if I get that right. In comparison to this one, which has more of the C-shaped teeth, when you look from the side, you don't see those gaps as much. You see it more kind of linking together, like rolling hills. If you can't see it clearly, check out the photos. We will try to take good photos to make this obvious. Also look on page 64 of your key where there's some nice photos. So that covers the skulls of the ground squirrels. The skins are a little bit easier to identify. So first one we have Calispermophilus lateralis. Has these two big stripes on the side. This is not a chipmunk. People often think it is a chipmunk because it has the black and white stripes. But chipmunks have center stripes, and this also is larger, has this kind of reddish head. This is our golden mantled ground squirrel, golden mantle. Eurysteles columbianus has this really nice red head, red forehead, not the rest of the head. And the rest of it is this mottled kind of browns and grays and whites and blacks and nice color. Richardson's ground squirrel, Eurysteles richardsoni, is more of a plainer brown. It has kind of yellow underneath the tail in comparison to some ground squirrels in other places, but this is our only ground squirrel that's kind of this plain brown. It's smaller than a prairie dog, and it also has a longer tail than a prairie dog. And the last one, the 13-lined ground squirrel, surprise, surprise, has all these lines. So this, distinctive pattern should not be confused with any other species.